Good morning, everyone, and Hope family. Welcome to this version of our early morning devotions. I know I've referred to them as our back porch devotions, but I'm going to be doing them for just a little while Jonathan takes a break. He's done such a tremendous job at getting these out and doing these on a consistent basis. But I thought I would take my turn and give him a little bit of a break here. We need to continue to pray for Angel. Ask God to keep His hand upon him and just watch over him as he continues to try to recover from everything that's happened. The details are too many to try to list here, but just continue to pray for him and again the family of Eli Hernandez, the pastor that passed away, and Pastor Rick Perry. Also, just keep all of those in your prayer. Also, we are looking forward again to June 7th. June 7th is our date that we're going to begin having services again. That's our target date. We're excited about that. So please keep that in your prayer. There will be details to come, but we're excited about being able to get back together again, but we want to do it safely. That being said, I wanted to take a minute here and talk about our Bible reading. We read out of 2 Samuel chapters 1 through 3 and then Psalm 58. But I really want to focus on 2 Samuel chapter 1. This opening part of 2 Samuel is David's coming into power. You will see, if you remember at the conclusion of 1 Samuel, Saul and his son Jonathan have died upon the mountains of the hills of Gilboa. And David is going to get word that Saul has passed away. It's an interesting story to me because it says everything about David. Here is Saul, who has chased David and tried to kill him on multiple occasions. On at least two different times, David had the opportunity to kill Saul and yet refrained his hand. Once, Saul had went into a cave where David and his men were hiding, and David was able to get close enough to him to cut off a portion of his robe, the hem of his robe, and when Saul went back out and went back down to his men, David came out of the cave holding this piece of cloth and demonstrating to Saul, "I could have killed you." And then there was another time that David snuck into the camp of Saul and took his spear and his water bottle that was by his head, and then climbed back on the hill on the other side and called out to Abner. And Abner's going to play a key role in these first few chapters here, first three chapters of 2 Samuel. But he calls out to Abner and says, what are you doing? You're not protecting your master the way you're supposed to. And he said, "See, I've got the spear and the water skin that was next to his head." And again, David demonstrating, I could have killed Saul. I could have, and yet I didn't. If you remember the story where Abigail, when David went to slay her husband because he was angry because he had not given him the rations. He had protected his sheep, but David, when he showed up at the party, he just sent him away empty-handed. And when David's men showed up, and yet Abigail met him and said, "Nabal is he's a wicked man. Nobody can talk to him. But David, you've restrained yourself. You haven't taken vengeance on Saul, and so don't do this. Don't do this to try to take vengeance for Nabal on yourself." And so all of these things come to light here because now God has taken vengeance. God has corrected the wrong. And everybody's watching. How is David going to respond to this? What is David going to do? And how is he going to react? And the young man that was an Amalekite, when he's bringing this news to David, he thought, I am bringing good news. I'm going to get a reward for this. But David was soon to prove him otherwise. He was going to question his motives. I think he questioned his story, exactly how everything had happened. And David, and I've got my Bible on my phone here, so he when he asked him, he told him the story of what had happened and what had took place. But David asked him, "Why weren't you afraid to raise your hand against the anointed of the Lord?" And that begins to give us a clue about how David is going to react. He eventually kills this Amalekite here early in this story, and then he takes up this lament concerning Saul and his son. And it's one of the more beautiful psalms ever written. And as a personal note, a portion of this psalm was read at my grandfather's funeral, and I by the minister that did the funeral, and I still remember it. But it says, "A gazelle lies slain on your heights, Israel. How the mighty have fallen. Tell it not in Gath, proclaim it not in the streets of Ashkelon, lest the daughters of the Philistines be glad, lest the daughters of the uncircumcised rejoice. Mountains of Gilboa, may you have neither dew nor rain. May no showers fall on your terraced fields. For there the shield of the mighty was despised, the shield of Saul no longer rubbed with oil. From the blood of the slain, from the flesh of the mighty, the bow of Jonathan did not turn back. The sword of Saul did not return unsatisfied. Saul and Jonathan, in life they were loved and admired, and in death they were not parted. They were swifter than eagles. They were stronger than lions. Daughters of Israel, weep for Saul, who clothed you in scarlet and finery, who adorned you with ornaments of gold. How the mighty have fallen in battle. Jonathan lies slain on your heights. I grieve for you, Jonathan, my brother. You were very dear to me. Your love for me was wonderful, more wonderful than that of women. How the mighty have fallen. The weapons of warfare have perished." It's interesting to me because you could have expected the opposite reaction out of David. You could have expected him to rejoice. You could have expected him to be talking about how God had taken vengeance for him. You could have expected him to talk about, "Saul, you had this coming. This is what you get for chasing me all over the wilderness. This is what you get for doing all." But David didn't do any of those things. What David chose to do was to remember what Saul was at his best. And he remembered the things that Saul did and chose that were good. Jonathan talked the other night about if there be any praise, think on these things, the good things. And David chose to do that with Saul. And I know sometimes right now, when we look at our leaders, when we choose up sides about which side we're on, if it's this side or that side, conservative, liberal, Republican, Democrat, that we choose to accentuate the good in those we agree with and accentuate the bad in those we disagree with. But yet David did none of that. David certainly had a grievance to bear. He had been chased all over the country. He had been chased into the Philistines' land he had hid out. But David instead chose to remember the good that Saul had done. And he chose to lament over that. As we, in our time here, what I'm encouraging us to do is let's go find the good. Whether it's in our leaders, whether it's in our friends, let's find the good. Yeah, there's going to be, they're human beings. They're going to have flaws. They're going to have issues. They're not going to say everything perfectly. They're not going to do things the right way all the time. Sometimes it seems hardly any time. But yet, God says, find the good. Let's do that. Let's go think on those things which are good. Let's celebrate what God has done in our lives. We wish things were better. We wish things were different. But let's think about the good. And let's rejoice in what God does with every single person that he brings into our life. I love you, Hope family. June 7th. Excited about being able to get back together. Let's worship and rejoice together. Until then, We'll see you soon. God bless you. In Jesus' name.